Hi folks, wanted to do a reasonably short video on Cleavers because Cleavers is ready to be harvested all over the wild world. Cleavers is Galium aparine. It's in the family Rubiaceae. It is everywhere right now, and you'll see later it's best recognized by the fact that its leaves and stems will stick to you like Velcro. It has other family members that do not have that characteristic, but the one we want is the one that is called Sticky Willy and other things because of this hairy characteristic of feeling a little bit like Velcro. So we're looking for the aerial parts, which we're going to dry. We're going to dry them in the house because it's been a very dry period in Connecticut, but they might require a dehydrator if there's any humidity at all. So Cleavers are often best made into a tincture or an alcohol-based extract with the fresh herb or the dried herb. Some of the authors prefer making everything with the dried herb. It really varies in terms of what you want to do. I love, as a reference, using Making Medicine by Richo Cech, and I'll put this book and a couple of others in the comments. Richo gives you some basic guidelines and talks a little bit about the general purpose use of Cleavers. Cleavers is very high in chlorophyll and all kinds of minerals, and it's a good spring tonic for getting through the winter and cleaning out the body, and it's a lymph tonic. It's a urinary tonic. It's very good in a salve as a skin softener. It has many uses. The internet's full of the information on this, but I wanted to have you take a look at what it looks like, and then you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do with it if you can find it. It's only going to be around at this point in the year. You won't see it later so much. And once it flowers, we just leave it to flower and let it climb where it's going to climb. We want to get it before it flowers. Here is some Cleavers, very common spring weed. The botanical name is Galium aparine. It's also known as Sticky Willy, catchweed, Clivers. There's a bunch of common names. The plant has hairs that almost feel like Velcro. They stick to anything. Cloth. There you have it, Sticky Willy. They're identifiable by that particular characteristics, but also by the whorls of leaves, all opposite each other, in a circle around the plant. At every node, you'll see that same characteristic. It will flower pretty soon here, and it has very small clusters of white flowers. I'll try to get an image of that when I let some of them go to flower. It has a tendency to crawl all over the top of things, but it's not a huge problem weed, because when you decide you don't want it somewhere and you give it a pull, it has next to nothing for roots. I mean, there's nothing here but little teeny rootlets. It pulls right out easily so that you can decide where you want it or where you don't want it. I love that it just appears in new places in the spring, and then I harvest it for use, and then I just pull it. Oh, and the compost pile absolutely loves it. So whatever you pull that you don't use, you can toss in the compost. Or just let it compost on the ground next to your garden beds. There was a bunch of it growing all over these plants, but that's what I just harvested. So they're not there anymore, and probably won't be. When you let it flower, of course, and it goes to seed, it will come up all over. It is, I believe, an annual, so when it seeds, that's when you'll see it in a location. I've just harvested a really nice big bunch of Cleavers. This is Galium. Cleavers is a Galium that has very Velcro-like hairs. It sticks to your clothing. Voila. And that's how you know the difference between this and common bed straw, a different kind of Galium. So I'm harvesting this now before it flowers. It's crawling all over everything, and the best solution is to just pull it off. It has enormously shallow roots, so it's very easy to pull out. I don't want to lose all of it because I want to have it for next year. So I'm going to dry this. In this case, I'm going to hang it to dry because we're having a really big dry spell here in Connecticut. And then when it's nice and dry, I'll store it, and then it'll get used in a variety of ways. I'll make tea from it. It's very good for the urinary tract and for other parts of the body. It's very good for clearing clogged lymph, which we all have a little of from time to time, but it tends to go with some kinds of disorders. It is highly nutritious, full of all kinds of vitamins and minerals, so having it as a spring tea is a great idea. And then I'll also make a tincture from it using probably 100 proof vodka. And then I'm going to try, once it's dried, to make an oil out of it as well, where I'll soak it in extra virgin olive oil. And I'll show you more about that later. Cleavers. Here's the cleavers. I separated them into bunches. They're going to air dry here in this large room. And the bunches aren't real big. I want the air to move around them so that they dry quickly. My experience is that cleavers are mostly water. They dry pretty quickly. And we're going through, as I said, a dry spell here in Connecticut. No rain in the forecast. So this is a perfect time to hang dry herbs. It's a little tricky the rest of the year and the rest of the summer to dry herbs in Connecticut this way, unless you have a temperature controlled or a moisture controlled house, which I don't. I do have a food dehydrator in the basement, and during the periods where we have more humidity, I will dehydrate my herbs to get them dried. But this is working great here. And this is some previously air-dried cleavers. Nice color, kept its color. That's a good sign that they dried well. And I'm going to chop those up and put them in a airtight jar for future use. They will reduce in size like a lot because of the moisture content that they have. Once they're dried, they should be crunchy, like that sound, and crispy. I want to mention just one more book. There's so many, and I will eventually have a complete list available for people to peruse. Most of these are available on the internet or at Amazon for sure. But one of my favorite teachers of all time was Amanda McQuade Crawford. And her book on herbal remedies for women has multiple references to the use of cleavers as a lymph mover, as something that helps to remove toxins from the body, or after an illness, remove any leftover parts that we don't want in our bloodstream. It's also referenced in here as a wonderful urinary tonic. And while it doesn't talk a lot about preparation of medicine, it gives you some ideas about yet another person's information about cleavers and all kinds of other herbs, of course. On that note, we'll say goodbye and good luck finding cleavers.